what's up, John?
What up, guys? How are you?
Doing great.
Doing well.
What's it been like?
Hot.
Now, I'm assuming, like, are you wearing, like, golf polos with moisture-wicking material? Like, you're not wearing, like, cotton
No,
golf
it's
shirts out
shirts.
there.
Sports. I'm not wearing. There's no collared shirts for me in practice.
Oh, okay.
It's just T-shirts, sports T-shirts.
Right.
Because yes, they're out there in that stuff. I'm going to be in that.
All right.
Stuff
Headwear to keep the sun off of you.
I take the glasses off, put the contacts in so I can wear sunglasses. Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. You're a grizzled
I got
vet.
a strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
You know the drill.
So we were just talking about during the break that it's very hard to find anything that even questions Jayden Daniels.
Right.
Seems like everything is glowing coming out of camp, what Dan Quinn says about him, what all the reporters are saying about him. I mean, has there been anything negative, or is this guy just unbelievable?
I think, I mean, I'm going to try to say something witty, but I have nothing because there hasn't been, like, it's not like he spurned some kid's autograph either. You know what I mean? There's not, I mean, the guy's always walking around smiling, and I think he enjoys himself out there. I think, when you see somebody enjoying themselves like that, I think it's infectious for teammates. Mm-hmm. I've had guys tell that to me that, that they start to see more and more of his personality, and it's just like they gravitate to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the thing I would always say, and you caution, but it's a step in the process, right? So first step, you get them in here, you get the spring, now you got this first part of training camp. That's another step. The next step comes in joint practices and games. The field more, right? You see it on there now, but you'll start to see more against another team, how it could look and evolve. But yeah, I mean, the parts that they really like are the things that I think matter to playing the position. And that's, as Dan Quinn said yesterday, the processing speed. You have others talk about just, again, a natural leadership ability, but it's the work that he's putting in behind the scenes. I think that's stuff that they all gravitate toward too, or point to, because they know how much that stuff matters. So, I mean, on the field, again, there's so much we don't know yet. And I think that's what you always have to call. He was a really good pick, period. But there's still a lot we have to learn. We don't know how this offense is going to look. We don't know how soon he goes from being, number 2 pick, Heisman guy, to being a really good NFL quarterback. No clue, and there's so many other factors involved in that, but he is off to a really good start.
Yeah, I mean, the reports are just glowing. JP just kind of mentioned it. I mean, everyone is raving about him. The national commentators are all of a sudden, they're starting to come out of the woodwork predicting big things. C.J. Stroud like seasons, that kind of thing. It was funny.
That's a hard thing.
That is a hard thing. I mean, what Stroud did was unbelievable. In fact, he set the bar so high, I wonder how he's going to jump over it this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I was on vacation last week and just kind of monitoring things from afar. And I thought, reading all this stuff, I said, man, we've really come a long ways for just right before the draft where some people were questioning whether or not the kid even wanted to be here. And he's been nothing.
Which is always,
It was always crazy, but
Correct.
there was a little, maybe there was a little miscommunication, whatever. He didn't really know, but he's always been great, right? But everything, he's passed every test, been wonderful to interview. He's always smiling, great demeanor. But, man, when you really look at it, John, like all the glowing reports, and then somebody commented too, this guy's played 5 years of big time. It's not like he's a kid that played 1 year.
Right.
He's played 5 years. So I've always liked experienced quarterbacks really at that position. And this guy's seen it all, and they play at that level. And then with that athleticism and I mean, it really is, it's just set up right there for him. Let's not fail this kid.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point, too, with the experience in college, because with that, I remember talking to Dan Quinn before the draft, and it's, some people looked at it and it's like, well, it means he's already hit his ceiling. They looked at it as you had a lot more information to gather.
Oh, yeah.
And you saw him go through situations. You saw him, some tough teams that he played with at Arizona State and how he had to handle, how he had to compete. You saw him go through adversity with that. You saw him transfer.
Three-time captain, John.
Yeah, right. And he transferred, and he had to learn a new system, a new team, a new program, and he flourished. And then you know what I mean? So they had so much more information to gather, whereas for some others, there was a lot more projecting I think you had to do, and based on a few throws in a game or whatever it was, right? I think so that all matters, and and then there's a maturity level too, and you're coming in at 24 years old or whatever he is, and I think that helps, and I think, but I really think that so much of it too is just his attitude, and he
seems unfazed, right?
Well, very unfazed, and that's it's funny because I talked to Herm Edwards about this a few months ago for my podcast, but also others too. They say the same thing in Arizona State. Like if he had a bad play, he'd still come off the field smiling, not because he's happy about the play, but because he knows he's going to get it back, right? Or it's not going to fluster him, and that was always the point of it. But it's also, I think he understands. Again, he's not coming here to save the franchise, and he's been clear about that. And perhaps there have been some others who felt like their task was to come here to save the franchise or be the face. But he's not coming in here saying that. And I think that is something that, if you're a veteran, if you're Zach Ertz, if you're Bobby Wagner, you're those kind of, you're at that level. You've won Super Bowls. You've played with top guys. You know what it looks like. And, I think that matters to them. And I mean, he's talking to Bobby Wagner all the time. Like he really, there is a lot that he really does well. And I don't think that's manufactured or just like, I don't think it's not false. Right. He does talk to these guys. Now, again, what we don't know is how well he's going to play, but we do know that he does all this stuff. And I do know it matters to the veterans and it matters to the coaches. So, yeah.
What about, I guess Nikki was reporting, so I'm assuming you kind of saw the same thing, because Cakes was telling me during the break that the offensive line was just sort of getting manhandled the other day. Has that been a theme of camp? Was that just a kind of a rough day? Or
Well, yesterday there are like Andrew Wiley's out. Have a backup tackle go out. Then you have to put Mason Brooks, who's more of a guard, at a right tackle with the second group facing Frankie Louvo. That's not going to work well. So there were circumstances that led to that, for sure. But yes, there were some issues. But yeah, and Sam Cosmi wasn't practicing yesterday. So she's right in what she said. There were also circumstances as well. But yes, that is, but I don't think it's been necessarily a theme in camp. But what they have done though is there's a starting interior group, right? And that's Cosmi, Allegretti, and Biotish. And then left tackle has primarily been Brandon Coleman. The right side has been a mishmash because you have, again, Wiley's been dealing with this tightness that he hasn't been out there as much. He told me yesterday he thought he'd be out there for later in this week. And then the guys at different spots. If you're a backup guard, you got to learn how to be a backup center, et cetera. So that leads to some things as well. But there's still questions about that group. I mean, I think the interior will be pretty good. I like what I've seen of Brandon Coleman, but the same thing, you don't know what it's going to look like against another team, against there's some really good pass rushers in this division. What's it going to look like against them? Is he ready for that? I don't know. But I do definitely think he can play in this league, but what level, where, I think that's still to be determined. But yeah, so yeah, there were some times yesterday that some of the backups had some moments that probably didn't want.
John, how is the kicking competition playing out at this point between Ahmed and Patterson, who was recently brought in a few days ago?
It's scintillating.
I'm sure it is.
They've been about the same in practice, because you're not going to get. They're going to kick off to the side and all that, and you're not going to sit there and monitor that because you're on a different field. But during the practices, it's been, they'll have a series and they'll get 5 kicks, and you go from, like the 28 all the way to the 53 or whatever it is, something around approximately. And it's been pretty even, but kind of comes down to right now, if it was between these two, well, you have one guy who's experienced who actually did a pretty good job last year in Riley Patterson, and the other guy hasn't kicked in the NFL. He attempted a field goal in the NFL. So to me, that's what it comes down to. I also think I'll be curious to see if they don't go with, let's say, Riley Patterson, who's the more experienced. If they don't go with him, then you're going to have other guys come available later this month with final cuts. So, like it, I don't know that we can say for sure their kicker is definitely on this roster right now. But I would say, like Riley Patterson, maybe when we're monitoring, I think their numbers are about the same. There was one day they were both 4 for 5, and they both missed from I think it was 50, and they were both wide right. I think the other day I think they were kind of the same, if I remember right. But Patterson has the experience, and the other thing that factors too is the kickoffs are so different. And in the past, it used to be like you want the guy with the leg to kick it at touchbacks, and now I'll be curious to see how that strategy plays and which kicker maybe is a little bit. Does that help as far as can you kick different styles? Like kick some tough ground balls or what? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just it adds a different element. But Patterson again has the experience.
Well, just quickly on the defensive side, I've been just super curious on the Jamin Davis experiment to try to get more out of his athleticism. But the early reports I'm reading, you guys all seem to think he's struggling. What is your perspective?
Yeah, and I think he hasn't shown yet that this is going to be some easy transition, and it's a hard transition. I mean, you're talking about going to play a different spot that you haven't played. There's different instincts. There is an art to pass rushing or to playing any position when you go down there. How do you use your hands? Your explosiveness on the get off, right? Things like that, where you're still, you're not. It's still, I would just say, an adjustment, and you haven't necessarily seen this. You can't sit there and say right now, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great move. You don't know that yet. I know Dan Quinn said in the beginning of camp that you're not going to give it just 1 or 2 days, so you got to see. But I don't know where he fits right now with that, to be honest. And I don't think you can sit here and say they've got another edge rusher. I think if they want to see that, you're going to have to me, you'd have to see more. And some of that too is also what are you doing on the side, right? How are you progressing over here, and what do they see in some of the individual drills before you get to team to see, is he progressing in that area? So I think there's still more I would say it's an incomplete move right now, and more to be determined to see if he can really play that, or if he's more of a linebacker. Then if they feel like he's more of a linebacker, how does he fit with this group?
Gotcha.
Talking to John Keim, Commanders reporter for ESPN.com. Just fill in the blank. If you have to pick, the offensive star of training camp has been?
Well, I mean, Jayden Daniels stands out. Sam Cosmi's probably is really good. So I'm okay going that direction. And even Quinn talked about the other day just how consistent he is. But Cosmi's really good.
And the defensive star has been?
I'll probably just go Frankie Louvu.
Oh, okay.
Dude's fast. He is fast, and I really liked watching his film after they signed him last year. And part of me, but watching him in practice, he's fast. He's got some explosiveness.
Have you mentioned Eckler at all? In this call, I can't remember. How's
I
he
haven't
look?
mentioned him.
How's he look?
Quick. He looks quick now. So last year, when you watch him, again, when you sign someone like that, I want to what do they? You didn't see the explosiveness, right? But then he's okay, he had a high ankle sprain early in the year. That's going to impact you severely. And later in the year, there were a couple of games okay, that's the kind of cut that I've expected from him. And then in camp, you're seeing that. But you also, with backs, what I learned a long time ago, you got to see him in a game because you just don't know. They're not hitting full, but I have seen some quick returns or sometimes from scrimmage. And, yesterday you talk about the O-line, like they had him one time lining up right next to Mason Brooks at tackle, and he's helping with Frankie Lou, who does a nice job. So, but if you guys remember when Larry Johnson was here, I remember that training camp and how, like, that was one of the big talks of camp was like, oh, my God, Larry Johnson looks really good. And then I think there's two. Exactly, right. So I'm not saying that he's going to do that. I just think it's more about let's see step 2. But I would say, like, there are times where I like, that's a good cut.
All right, good.
It's encouraging. Encouraging news so far. Thank you, John.
I mean, it is, and we'll see what happens when they start facing other teams. But, yeah, so far, so good.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.